Go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's live stream. I hope you can hear me okay. Give me a shout and just double check all of the audio is fine. I have Michael with me tonight. Hi, Michael.
Hi. Hi.
Michael's one of our associate designers, and we are delighted tonight to have him here because we wanted to do a little bit of an inside development live stream. We've done a few of these before in the past, but we really wanted to kind of open the hood on how we do things here at Dovetail. And it gives me great pleasure tonight to say that we're going to be talking to you about how we make gameplay. Specifically, I think we're going to be looking at scenarios, but I think we're going to have a little bit more of a general look at a few other things as well. But yeah, it's a really good opportunity for you guys at home to have a look and see some of the tools that we use and how we use them, as well as also I can ask some stupid questions because I don't have the first clue about things that we're going to be doing tonight, so I can ask the silly questions so you don't have to. However, if you do have questions as we go through, happy to throw them Michael's way. It'd be great to have as many people as we can do throwing suggestions in, and therefore we can do a lot with them. Okay, so slight echo on mine apparently. On my audio, Michael. I think we might have to. I don't know if you've got anything else. Have you got the stream playing in the background?
Possibly, yeah. Possibly, yeah. Let me change that.
It might well be that it's capturing your device audio and it's tracking the YouTube video as well. Just wait. Nobody wants to hear me echo.
How's that?
Let me start talking again, and I will let you know. I'll let the chat know. Let me know if that's all good, if that's better. Go on, chat. Do me proud. Going to assume. There we go. All better. Okay. Brilliant. Thank you very much. Okay. So, Michael, just by way of introduction, can you tell this? We've had you on a live stream before, but it was a little while back. So, can you refresh everybody's memories who might not have been watching that stream or who might have forgotten? What is it? Who are you, and what is it that you do at Dovetail?
I'm Michael, and I'm an associate designer for the TSW team, gameplay team. We've recently expanded our team, so we've got quite a few new people now. And together we basically design all the playable aspects of TSW. I've got a Spirit of Steam loaded up, so we'll have a look at that today.
Nice. Apparently you're still echoing, Michael, so I'm not quite sure. It seems like we've killed my echo and then enhanced yours, so I'm not quite sure there. About loud apparently.
Okay, how's that? Hopefully that's better.
Nice. Okay. Should we cut to your screen then? I think that would be quite nice to show sort of where we're at, because as you said, we've got something that we've prepared earlier for you. It's a little bit like Art Attack. No, not Art Attack, sorry, Blue Peter. I'm getting my old British TV mixed up. Tonight, yeah, we're going to be going through some of the bits and pieces. If you want a little bit of an introduction to this, in our latest roadmap article in July, we did, or Michael, I can't take any credit for this. Michael put together an article for us, or a piece in the roadmap article, which talked a little bit about some of the things that we did with Spirit of Steam. So we're going to try and bring some of that to life today, but it's a really good sort of freshening up of kind of people's memories, and also a nice little introduction to what it is that we're going to be talking about tonight.
Cool. Right, I'll swap screens, and I'll probably kill cams as well, just so you get a look at everything in the editor.
No worries.
Right, that should be everything sorted, I think. I'm hoping so. Hey, there we go. Cool. Is that any better? Yeah. Oh dear, okay. I know why. Switch back to this for a second.
Let's just switch back to this
Yeah.
for a second.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if people can hear me, but I don't think so. So I'm just going to talk and look like this. And people are going to be confused because they're going to think I'm talking about something and I'm not actually talking about anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, apologies for this.
Yeah, apologies for this. I am
Trying to find.
Hey, you can hear. They can hear me. Woohoo!
Okay. I think I know what the
Source of
Well,
the
it's
issue is.
source of the issue is.
Glad I didn't say something compromising there.
Right, which are you? You
And
are...
now you're echoing again, apparently.
Yeah, that's fine. That's normal.
Yeah, that's fine. That's normal.
Yeah, so just while Michael's sorting that out, you might have noticed over the course of the last couple of days, the last couple of live streams, we've been trying some new people out on hosting live streams. So apologies for the Michael, and that obviously means that we're training some new people up to do some new stuff.
Okay. I think that's everything. I'm hoping that's everything.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Can you hear us both now?
Woohoo! Yes, we're back.
Okay, I got down to the cause of it. Okay. So you should hear us on this.
Can you hear us now? We're going to be stuck in the bottom corners. We're going to be as small as we can be, just while we get this all sorted. Woohoo! Okay.
Okay.
So what we were saying just before that is we are trying out some new people hosting live streams, myself included. And you might have seen there were a few challenges when I did my first one a few couple of weeks ago. So just bear with us. We want to try and get as many interesting, different, exciting people onto the live streams as we can do. And obviously what that means sometimes is that we are going to have a few little technical hiccups. Thanks for bearing with us. Hopefully, as I say, we can show you some good stuff tonight and it'll be worth the wait.
Cool. Right. After 10 minutes of faffing with that, I can
we can get started.
What you came for. This is the TS2 editor. I'll go briefly over all of this, otherwise I'll be here all night trying to explain what everything that you're currently seeing is. So in the viewport here, we've got the level, and I've got Lime Street loaded up here. Down here is your content browser. This is where basically all of the DLC content is for whatever we're working on. So we've got all of the Liverpool Crew stuff here. There's some Leeds Manchester stuff here, but we're not going to be looking at Transpennine stuff at the moment. And then in here is all of the folders that are within the gameplay content folder, and this is mainly where our workspace is. So we've got different folders here that we set up. All of your training modules are in here, the service timetables in here, scenarios, scenario designer, your journey chapters, and then various other folders which I can get into later.
Nice. Does it just help to compartmentalize everything into its own box? It just means that it doesn't because I imagine there are multiple people working on this at the same time. So it just helps to just keep everything organized so that everybody knows what's what.
Definitely, yeah. If it wasn't, and there's about, I think, 7 of us that'll be working on, separate parts of gameplay. Having the sort of too many cooks spoiling the broth would occur.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got Joe in the chat as well, who obviously spends most of his time in the timetable folder. Hi, Joe.
We usually put a big "Do Not Disturb" picture on this, and Joe can have his way with the timetable. Although for this one, it was a "Do Not Disturb" for me for this one. So.
Because I remember last time we had you on the stream, Michael, you were talking about timetables, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was probably about a year ago now. So if you want to go back into our YouTube channel and find that one as well, that was also really interesting about how we put together all of our timetables for different routes. So, yeah, one to go back into the archives for.
Yeah, definitely. I can go over it briefly in this one as well, but it won't be as in depth.
Sure.
So I guess we'll start with training, since it's the first thing you see in gameplay usually. So in here we've got all of your Spirit of Steam specific training modules. There were a whole lot more than what we usually do because there was a lot to explain for Steam engines. So you've got your route intros, and then all of your loco specific tutorials, and one for signaling, watering, your Steam Cab tour, and the fireman as well. So in the route intro, even more files, surprisingly enough. The main ones that I'll cover are the scenario definition. I'll go into more detail of these each as we go along. Your help tips, your player objectives, and then the timetable that's specific to the scenario as well. And then we've got some thumbnails in here that'll show up on the menu. There's also a weather preset in here. I can go into more detail of that as well. And then various other folders that'll include stuff like voiceover dialogue. Got some stuff for camera sequences, since we had a very nice camera sequence. Thank you, Cameron, for that in the route intro. And other various folders as well. Tiles that we've checked out since we've put stuff in the world. So yeah, I think the most interesting thing to delve into is probably the objectives and timetable. I'll show the timetable first because that's something a bit easier to explain, hopefully.
I was gonna say you're gonna have to speak to it in very layman's terms, Michael, because I'm already at the very precipice of exactly what I'm going to be able to comprehend, I think, tonight.
That's fine. Yeah, if I go too in depth, reel me back a bit, and I'll go over some stuff again.
I will absolutely ask stupid questions. Again, if anybody's got any questions in the chat as well as we go through, please feel free to throw it in there, and I will ask Michael.
Yeah, I'll stop through each section, I guess. So once we've done this, by all means, ask me all the questions you feel. So in here we've got various different nodes of all various different colours, all doing various different jobs. So these blue ones here and down the side here are all the rail vehicles that are included for this route intro in this case. So we've got some static Jubilee rail vehicles here. These might be scattered about somewhere. What else have we got? We've got some ATEFs in there and some various plank wagons as well. So these formations are ones that are either drivable by AI or the player. These are your service nodes. These nodes have various instructions in them telling you whether they're player drivable or not, whether they need to spawn with an engineer or a driver or a conductor or a second man if it's US freight. The start time, so when it starts the service, what kind of service class it is. There's loads of information in these nodes. I'll scroll down so you can have a read of some of them. And then at the bottom are all your rail vehicles that are in the consist that you've got in the rail vehicle in here. And then the following other nodes, so you've got load and unload or wait nodes. These will have your train either stop and wait for however long you put the time in, or they'll load and unload passengers. And then you have these nodes which are stop at or go via nodes or go to nodes. Clues in the name, you can either go via a waypoint or you can stop at the waypoint. And you can put the location in, which will be a point on the map. So if I was to minimize this and bring up the route map and zoom in, it's very similar to the route map you get in game, only it shows all of the different track markers that we can select as well. So say you wanted a train starting in Liverpool Lime Street, you would place it down by selecting it here, and then you could put a go via or a stop at here in Edge Hill, and your instruction would look something similar to this, where it starts at Liverpool and then goes via a location. This one unfortunately stops at Runcorn, so it's a bit further along, but you get the idea. And then you've got portal nodes. These are usually on AI services, and the portals are these, I guess, dark blue track markers. These will take the trains off the map and they'll despawn and be put into what we call the vault, so you can call them at will, basically. And then end service nodes end the service. And yeah, luckily the route intro isn't too complex. If you were to look at the service timetable, you would have a lot of spaghetti mess. There would be a whole lot of services.
I was going to say, this feels, I mean, obviously these are the introductory modules. They're relatively simple, all things considered. And that still looks like quite a complex relationship of things all put together. So I can only imagine what it might look like if you threw longer services into the mix, other methods of gameplay, all different kinds of other bits and pieces. It feels like this is almost the simplified version of what what it could look like.
Well, I mean, the route intro is only about 10 minutes long, so really this is 10 minutes of content.
Crikey.
But all of this is literally just trains moving from a location to another location. That's all these instructions do, and allow for passengers to board if they need to board, or freight to load if it needs to load.
And the kind of the wiggly lines between, because you've obviously got the straight lines that go horizontally.
Yes.
The wiggly lines, what do they represent, or what kind of relationship do they have between various different elements here?
So if you're familiar with using flowcharts, it's basically like building a flowchart. So these red lines are just direct flows that go from one node to another. These white ones are dependencies. So say this service, it will unload, but I think if I'm correct, it can't move on to the next instruction until whatever it's dependent on does that instruction first. So in this case, this one's got a dependency on this service going via crew up through, which will be a name of a track for a service that goes through crew station. And there's one further down here as well. So yeah, when this train enters the portal as well.
I mean, I'm sure you get used to it, Michael, but I think Peter's in the chat has just basically summarised how I feel about the situation. The folks working on this must go home after work each working day with frazzled brains and hurting eyes.
Oh yeah,
I mean, we've been on this 10 minutes and I'm already getting that vibe.
There's a reason why everyone on the team has kind of their own responsibilities, because there's a lot to take in just within, each section of gameplay. That's why I only really want to go over it briefly, so I don't overload too many people.
Yeah, I get that. No, I think there's a lot of people that are in the chat that are really interested in this kind of thing. I know there's a few modders in the chat that are interested to find out a little bit more about how the back end works, so they can obviously do their thing. So you're providing some really useful service, and what we'll try and do is if you talk about it as a developer, I'll try and, if I can, get it into more kind of, I guess, less moddy language, less technical language, and we'll see if we can see if we together we can make sense of everything and allow everybody at home to kind of make sense of everything.
Yeah.
So someone suggested to show the spaghetti that is London to Brighton, please.
You would like? Well, I haven't got it loaded up, but I'll tell you what. Since we've finished with covering all of this in the root intro, I'll be happy to show you what service mode looks like on Spirit of Steam.
Okay.
So let's have a look at the route timetable. We'll do the full PC version. We have got a Gen 8 version. Usually we find that Gen 8 consoles, although they're brilliant, cannot run absolutely everything. So sometimes we have to do a little bit of jiggery pokery to get timetables to work on Gen 8 consoles. So I'll show you the full one. This might take me a while. And yes, it does say that Matt Peddleston has it checked out, but I might not have the latest. So
how zoomed in are we on this? I'm dreading how much we're going to have to zoom out.
Funnily enough, I'm on one of the what we call layers. So this isn't even the main timetable. This is an offshoot or a branch of it. So this is just one of the branches. So these are all the passenger services that go from Liverpool off to Manchester. So they only really stop at either Edge Hill or Ditton, which is sort of a quarter of a halfway through the route. The full timetable looks like this, where the main meat of it is.
And I'm sure
I'll
again
slowly scroll through it for you.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's a trick to this because it obviously looks relatively neat, but I can imagine if you're coming to this for the first time and you perhaps don't quite have it, you haven't got into your verve with it, I can imagine it is just a jumbled mess the first time that you might do something like this.
Oh yeah, we don't tend to show people the most complex ones because they won't want to do service timetables otherwise, because there's a lot that goes into it.
That is fair.
But yeah, this is basically just a more complex version than the one I showed you for the route intro. Obviously the one in the route intro is all compressed into 10 minutes. This has to go over 24 hours, so...
I'm enjoying Joe's commentary in the chat as well. His latest quote, "When I first looked at this, I died."
It sometimes feels like that, yeah. It's definitely... Every timetable we've done has always been a challenge. I don't mind sharing this knowledge with everyone, but don't talk to me about turntables, is all I'm going to say for Spirit of Steam. Don't talk to me about turntables.
I know the turntables were a particular challenge for, I think, everybody. So the fact that you've got the working turntables on there, I think is a really good testament to the power of like determination of just wanting to get something done through sheer will.
That's all on code support for that, because it was a feature we thought was working and I had to show them that it wasn't. So luckily we got it in a good position for Spirit of Steam, and yeah, it seems like everyone enjoys it. So cool. So yeah, that's the service timetable, and I would go into more detail, but I think I already have done in another stream, so I won't go over absolutely everything. But there's some slightly different options in this that you need for a service timetable than you would a scenario timetable, which are these data tracks down here. To get these, we have to do something that's called simulating the timetable, which is a lengthy process, but it has been refined over the years. So something that took almost exactly 24 hours now takes, well, depending on whether you're me or Joe, it can take an hour or it can take 3 hours. But it's a lot better than 24 hours.
Yeah. So what happens if there's if it identifies a fault? What say for instance, one of the dependencies doesn't work, or there is something that's in the wrong place, or there's a red light where there shouldn't be a red light, or something like that, or there's a piece of AI, a rogue piece of AI traffic.
Yeah.
How does that then get recognized in something like this? And then what do you do, or how would you go about then fixing or rectifying it?
Okay, so if we can't tell exactly what's going on once we've received a log from simulating it, so basically all the code that gets output once we simulate the timetable, we've got something called a playback, which I should have here. There we go. I don't think it'll show up properly. Oh, it will. Okay. I haven't simulated, but I assumed it should have showed up properly anyway, and it has. So this is more of a visual output of what we get once we've simulated the timetable. So rather than reading a whole million lines of code, we've got something a bit more visual to follow. So all of these, along this timeline, are all of the services running, when they're on the map, when they're off the map, etc. So we would scrub through here and see sort of where things are going a bit dodgy, and cross-reference it with the output log that we got from the simulation. And it's pretty clear where things start collapsing at that point.
What would it look like visually if something were not working?
So you see, I guess this would be a good example. So this service goes through all of its instructions here, with all of its tiny little circles and stuff being each timetable instruction. And then you've got this thin line here. This thin line is basically when the train's gone into the portal and it doesn't need to come back out until whenever the next service starts. Sometimes these lines will go on for infinity, and obviously we don't want any of them going on for infinity, because that means that they're stuck in the portal and they can't come back out again. So that's very clearly an issue. Another one would be if say we're halfway through a service and it starts infinitely going. Obviously it's stopped somewhere and it can't progress if that's the case. So that's a clear issue as well. There's other issues that we come across as well, but I think I'd be right in saying those are the main ones that we can spot. And the cause of those could be from anything, from a signal not working correctly, or us authoring it incorrectly and running a train somewhere that it shouldn't be going.
Yeah, I mean, this is super interesting. I mean, my brain is about to explode, but it's super interesting. Bodie Hansen, I think, is channeling a few people in the chat by saying, I may sound stupid, but I don't understand anything. It's too complicated for me. And to be honest with you, I think, Michael, you've done a really good job so far of kind of getting across what it is that we're doing. But again, if you're anything like me, I'm not a very tech-minded person. I've never done anything like computing or anything like that. And so I think it is difficult to get your head around sometimes, even some of the most basic of processes, because, as I say, I've not had a background in this kind of thing. There will be people in the chat that are very much more grounded in this sort of thing and actually will take to this like a duck to water. But I guess in terms of the kind of characteristics of the kind of person you think that would be sort of born to be a associate designer, for instance, what would you say the kind of characteristics that you'd need in order to be a successful one?
Definitely a keen eye for detail. So if you like to get into the nitty-gritty details of things like how services work for in-term service mode, or even if you're, you know, creatively minded to think up about really cool ideas for scenarios as well, because all of our scenarios have a built-in narrative of whatever's going to happen, what weird event may happen. Yeah, sort of mixture of being a keen eye for detail, analytical, and very creative.
Cool, that sounds great. Well, shall we move on then?
Yep. So I'll go back to let's pick one of the scenarios. I don't think it really matters which one I do here. Let's do bovine blockage. And we'll have a look at the objectives. Load in, or whilst we're loading in. The objectives are basically all of the player objectives that appear on screen. So those are the tasks that appear in the corner that may tell you move the reverser to forward. Each one of those is basically hooked up the same as how we did the timetable services with nodes and stuff, and we have to put them through a sort of flowchart system.
It's like a wiring system, doesn't it? It looks
it
like
is,
we've just opened up the boiler or something like that. And
so all of this that I've shown you so far is what's called visual scripting. So if we were using an entirely different editor, or if we were, I guess, programming, it would all just be code. It would all be coded and typed in, whereas this is all visually built up. So all of this still has coding built into it, but it's so much easier to plug instructions in visually, or at least I find it a lot easier. Some people are differently minded and they'd rather code it in. Not me though.
What's the name of the tool that we're using? Is it
Unreal Engine 4 is what the basis
Fine.
of it is on, yeah. So
cool.
you can do what these are, which are blueprints in Unreal 4.
It looks like Jake's in the chat as well.
Yes.
He's asked us not to show this one because he said it's way too messy.
Okay, we won't show this one then, Jake.
Wearing his dirty laundry.
I mean, it doesn't matter too much. It shows the inside of one of the designer's minds is usually how we go about it. So I can still go through it. I'm sure Jake doesn't mind too much that we see a bit of his messy work. None of us are perfect, Jake. It's fine. So in here we have, I want to scroll to the main parts first, because some of these are some clever designer things that is going to take me ages to explain otherwise. So the main ones we've got in here are these event on composer nodes. Anything that happens in game on this action will only occur when a service from the timetable will be added. That's what this means basically. So event on composer will add service. Any instruction following this will only occur when you're about to add a service. If that makes sense.
Right, so from a player's perspective, when they see this in game,
these are the first instructions you get.
Yeah, so this is the first thing that you would see, and it would only happen if you were to, say, go into service mode and start up the service that you wanted to go into.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So following along here, we've only got one instruction, which is lucky. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes we've got a whole startup procedure immediately after it, but I think this is a bit later on. So in this one, we've got an intro brief plugged in, and that is on the left hand side here, and if I click on that, it gives you a whole load more options. A lot of it I'll skim over because there's way too much to cover in here. The main ones being, actually what I'll do is direct people's attentions to the important bits. So I'll close down all the ones that aren't important. I think that's all of them now. So we have general setup. This has all the information about the rail vehicle that we want to reference the... Wait, am I getting it the right way around? We want the objectives to reference this vehicle. So when the player gets into this vehicle, these objectives play in the same service as well. That's basically what all of these mean without me going into too much detail.
So there's a lot of words on there that I do not even want to try and understand. But yeah, that I think in layman's terms that makes sense.
Yeah, the rail vehicle of this service, basically. So this service in the timetable and this rail vehicle then does this objective appears. That's what all of that information is for. So you've got your rail vehicle ID, which is the rail vehicle, the model, and the view actor. Save game. Every instruction needs to have a unique save game GUID. Otherwise it crashes the whole thing. Well, it fails to compile. I should probably explain what compiling is as well. So every blueprint that we have needs to be compiled and saved before we can actually run it. Compiling it will make sure that everything we have created can be done, sort of thing.
So it's your kind of fail-safe, your safety net.
Basically, yeah. It runs through all the connections, see if everything's connected correctly, if everything's referenced correctly. If it's not, it'll come up in the compiler results as this thing has failed, this is what you need to do to fix it. And that's for every blueprint, so that'll be for the timetable as well. If you compile that and it fails, it'll usually tell you why it's failed as well. So this instruction is an intro brief, which means that it requires subtitles or a voiceover. So we get our voiceovers supplied by the audio team. We plop it into the content browser. We then plug it in here, and that's where you get all of mostly Matt's voice. Mostly Matt's voiceover coming through. So yeah, the audio is then plugged in, so we get all of the nice voiceover and subtitles included. And I think that's all that's required for a intro brief or any other brief that we have. It literally shows subtitles and a voiceover, nothing else is required. The other ones we have are lever or lever BPs. These are specific instructions associated with certain aspects of rail vehicles. So in this aspect it's a reverser going forwards. So in here we've got success conditions. Again, in the general setup we've said what rail vehicle we want to reference, what the controller is that we want to reference, or the thing we want to interact with, which is the reverser. Again, a save game grid. And if I collapse these, we've also got the UI that appears in the left. So that'll be the title, which is setting up the train. The reverser going forwards, that's the instruction. The little icon. And then if I scroll down, this one doesn't need any audio, so it hasn't got any in. And then all of these are repeated. We've got different ones like move to and a seat one in there as well. I won't go into details about them, otherwise I'll be here too long. But basically, we hook them all up, and all the objective flows go from left to right. And those are all of the objectives that you get in the game that appear in the top left that you can complete.
I'm not even really sure where to go with that, to be honest with you. I mean, as I say, you started off with a doozy with the timetable, and then we've gone into this, and I feel like this is probably even more complex. I just I think I 404 errored in my brain.
Yeah, there's a lot to go through. What I'll do is I'll play through one of the scenarios, and then you'll see visually what all of this does.
Yeah, so I mean, I think if you get nothing else out of this live stream, it's worth bearing in mind that when you play the game next time, and I don't want to ruin anybody's immersion, I don't want to ruin anybody's enjoyment of the game, but when you start up the train, just have a think about that screen. Have a think about all of the different inputs and all of the different decisions that are made to kind of get it to the point where you're operating the loco. Yeah, I mean, for something, okay, I'm not gonna sort of pretend to kind of understand where we are with all this stuff. I mean, as I say, I've not had a background in this at all, but it is. I just can't even get my head around it. I can't even begin to understand how somebody is able to put all of this together. So I have mass respect for you and the rest of the team for being able to do this.
Yeah, that's why we need a team to work on all this. I mean, if you tried to do it as a one-man band, we need the whole year to build it, I'd assume.
Yeah, absolutely. And how did a kind of a question really is obviously a lot of this stuff is set up already. So obviously you were sort of tick boxing some stuff, and there were other things that had already pre-populated areas.
Yes.
Who sets that up?
So we've got different dedicated teams working on specific stuff. So anything to do with the rail vehicle setup will work on that. So they are technical designers that work on the intricacies of how rail vehicles work. I don't want to go too much into it. I'm not an expert on that field, but all of the simulations inside a rail vehicle, they have authored and programmed, basically, or designed. So that's all set up for us already, and we just use we reference everything that they've implemented, basically. So say in a steam engine we want to use the reverser, someone has set that reverser to be able to go through all of the different increments it goes through, from 0 to 75 I think it goes up to. So someone's had to put those values in and make sure that the reverser actually does reverser things.
Yeah, and again, I think that again, having that distinction is really important, because obviously you're the ones that use the tools and use the things that are set up for you, but there's another team who set up the things that you use as well, which again, I'm sure we could do another live stream about who sets up the tools, but yeah, as I say, you've had some of the puzzle already kind of half put together, and you're kind of putting everything else in the right places.
Yeah, we're usually the last team in terms of the dev team that's implementing stuff. The only team that would still be implementing stuff whilst we're doing it would probably be Root Art as well. So we need the locos to function before we can start playing about with them, basically.
Awesome. Okay, what next?
Okay, so we've covered training modules, and I showed you the timetable. We covered the route timetable and probably broke everyone's minds. We've gone through scenarios and the objectives that are required for all of the tasks to appear and everything. I think at this stage we probably want our brains to have a rest. Do you want me to quickly play through one of the beginnings of the scenarios so that you can see all of the bits and bobs put together?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. I might need either Jake, Joe, or if Cameron's in the chat, to decide what we're going to play or what you think's suitable to show on stream. Because there's a few things in here I definitely don't want to click on because it didn't make it into release. In the
they
meantime,
say?
yeah.
Let's have a look. What did they say? Show the snow scenario.
Show the snowy one. Sure. So that'll be Snow Way Home, which is worst winter of all. It's the dev name for it. We were all hyped about Spider-Man, so we decided to call it that. So let me set this up. So at the moment, we don't have anything set to play an editor in here. So all we do to make sure, we can either do it this way, since I'm in the content browser, set as play an editor, this timetable. We then get the scenario definition, which has all the information about the objectives and the timetable. Set as play an editor, and then up here it says worst winter of all, and we can play it now. I think before I need to do that, we also need to include scenario scenery tool. I won't go in too much depth about what this does, but this allows us to include scenery onto the map without interfering with what the map looks like when you see it in service mode. So it only loads scenery assets within the scenario.
Right.
That'll make sense for.
So
worst
what
winter of all.
kind of what would that scenery be? What kind of things would that mean?
So in Worst Winter of All, spoilers if you haven't played it, around about halfway through, you'll see the scene where there is a driver and fireman trying to shovel the snow, trying to free the train. Those assets have been put into a contained scenery tile so that we don't mess about with the world. It's just those assets appear only for that scenario and not anywhere else.
Right. So things like the rail fans, for instance, would they come under that umbrella as well? I'm trying to think of any others off the top of my head. Like something that's on the tracks or something like that that you have to move. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Exactly. That's exactly it. I have clicked this. Yeah, a lot of these loading times are everyday occurrences for us, so we do have to wait for them, unfortunately.
Lots of cups of tea.
Yeah, plenty of cups of teas and coffee to get through the day. There we go. So now that we've got that loaded up here, we've got the correct scenario in here. We can then play. So we've got the default player start. We can start scenarios and timetables where our current position is now, if we need to check a specific location, for example. But since we're only playing it normally, we'll use the default player start.
Cool. Let's have a look and see how it looks.
Yep. This is where we wait as well. So if there are any more questions, this is an ideal time for me to answer them.
Yeah, let me just have a quick look and see what we've got.
Yeah, it's going to take me about 2 minutes or possibly more to load into this scenario from the editor.
I think a few people are saying the lag is real. Yeah, I think this is just the compute. Well, there is a lot of processing power that's required for something like this. So we just need to make sure that we've well, and streaming at the same time is obviously quite a challenge for it. So Jason's asked when we were talking about portals earlier, how many trains can you hold in any one portal at one time?
Theoretically, as many as we like. Matt would be the best person to tell us exactly how many, because he's probably reached that limit.
Yeah, I mean, sensibly, I guess maybe. What would be your suggestion?
I think we've actually tested how many. Potentially, you can put all the rail vehicles that you've included in your timetable into the portal, and it'll be fine.
Okay.
So I would like to give you a value, but I don't know what the upper limit is.
Fine. I'm not sure again my brain could process the numbers right now anyway, so it's all good. Joe's just chucked in the chat. The trains are remembered by RAM, so the limit is based on RAM. He tried to spawn 1,185 from a portal and it crashed. So we know it's less than 1,000.
That sounds about right.
So yeah, this is the point where we would normally go and grab a cup of tea or go and chat to somebody for a little bit, just so we can wait and see.
When I was back in the office, this would be an opportune time for me to roll over to Cameron and be like, do you want to make a brew?
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the timelines that we might look at, I know this is a little bit of a how long is a piece of string question, but say Spirit of Steam, putting all of this together, how long a project is this? I know again it's dependent on how many people are working on it and how many people are who's doing what, but in this case of Spirit of Steam, how much time was spent on putting together the different gameplay elements?
It took a bit longer than expected this time round because we had a lot of different challenges to overcome. Compared to some other DLCs, it's a little bit. We were designing stuff, or at least planning, I think around about January, February, or at least I was for the timetable. But I don't think we actually actively started dev until a few months after that. I'm working on so much stuff all the time, I sometimes lose time of how long we've worked on stuff. What was the release date for Spirit of Steam? I can't even remember now.
31st of May.
31st of May. So yeah, it would have been about 3-4 months before.
Okay.
So we've been planning a lot of stuff beforehand, and then each responsibility in dev would then start their role in getting all the stuff ready for everyone else, and it just progresses through until we're ready to ship it.
Yeah, and then obviously there are things that happen before the gameplay team get their mitts on it as well. So there's a lot of track laying and a lot of environment art and all that kind of stuff that happens prior to the gameplay team getting involved with stuff. So the project is a lot kind of longer than that, but it's kind of from where you folks come into it is about maybe a halfway. Again, depends on the route, I guess, but maybe about halfway through-ish. Maybe in case of Spirit of Steam, I think it was probably longer than that because it's been a lot longer project, I think, than a lot of people were expecting.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have different timescales depending on what we're working on exactly. So we can't do what we need to do until the rail vehicles and the and signalling has been 90% done. 80.
Okay, cool.
I have a feeling that this may have crashed. It's also the stream, so what I'll do is close it down, unfortunately. So I'll swap back to the cameras for now.
Sure, yeah, let's go straight to cams. Let's go straight to the camera shot. So yeah, Michael's just gone through for us over the course of the first kind of part of, well, I guess first part of this. I don't quite know how much you want us to go into, Michael, to be honest with you, but we're definitely talking all kinds of things related to gameplay. We've talked about timetables. We've talked about putting together different bits of gameplay as well, and might I say, whilst Michael manages to try and get this all sorted in the background, we'll sort of talk a little bit about I think it's still lagging a little bit because I think it's really done some harm to Michael's computer. If we are unable to get it back, we've obviously got some really useful stuff, I think, anyway. So just give us a shout, Michael, if you are having problems, and what we'll do is we'll call it a day here, and maybe we'll try and pick up on the other bits another time. Yeah. But let us know if you're able to get it back in time.
What I'm going to do is I've closed down the editor completely, and I'm just going to run a separate instance of it where it just runs the game instead.
Cool.
Hopefully that's going to run a bit better. If it doesn't, then we can just go through a Q&A for the final bit, I guess.
Absolutely, yeah. Bear with me 1 second. Let's get this. So yeah, if you've got any questions, chuck them in the chat. It seems like a good opportunity to ask them, and I can throw my own in there as well. So when we're looking at gameplay, is there any kind of, I know we try and make, say, scenarios narrative driven. Is there anything when we're talking more generally about gameplay that the kind of the golden rules? Is there anything that when we're going through something it should or must have when we're putting it together?
I'm trying to think now. Well, it's got to include obviously the rail vehicles that we have available to us for that pack. Depending on what kind of scenario we want to create, we'd want to touch on passenger operations if it's a passenger loco, certain freight operations if it's a freight loco, switching, shunting, having the player do a little bit of on-foot stuff as well if that's required, and including anything interesting like a natural disaster, a mechanical failure, stuff that we wouldn't usually come across in service mode, in a service timetable.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so try and offer a slightly different experience. And again, as you see with many of the scenarios, they are a little bit more creative's the wrong word, but it's being sort of thinking outside of the box, I guess, in terms of what could potentially happen in real life, and perhaps accentuating some of that stuff, because obviously it's very difficult to incorporate that within, say, service mode, for instance. Having those kinds of standalone elements, I think, is obviously a really good part of providing a variety of different types of gameplay for different add-ons and different routes. Jason asks, what's the hardest scenario you've created?
The hardest scenario I've created. Now, I guess I can throw a question back, which would be hard for the player to complete or hard for me to design?
I think design. Let's go with design.
Yeah, difficult for me to design would probably be anything shunting or switching, because there's a lot of timetable instructions, there's a lot of track work to go over. There's more things that can potentially go wrong in the development of it than something that could possibly be a little more straightforward than a passenger run, because usually that only covers station, loading and unloading passengers, whereas switching, you're coupling and uncoupling rail vehicles multiple times and you're sending it down multiple different tracks. So yeah, I can't think of one off the top of my head recently, but yeah, I'd probably say anything switching or shunting is the most challenging to design.
And in my opinion, to play, if anybody's watched that 4-up challenge, you will know exactly where I'm coming from. Sandpatch grade is not my friend. A couple of people have asked a little bit more general questions about your favourite route, Michael. What's your favourite route in game? Or favourite? Actually, no. Let me rephrase that. Favourite route that you've worked on in game?
I've worked on a lot.
Yeah.
Spirit of Steam was the most challenging, but the most rewarding. And I know that's a bit of a cop-out sometimes, and it's the most recent one. But I mean, yeah, it was. I think it was the one that everyone was waiting for. So yeah, the most challenging to work on, but the most rewarding as well.
Lovely. I think that makes a difference as well, isn't it? I think when you come out of it and you think, oh yeah, I've overcome that challenge. That was an absolute nightmare, but I've done it, and I'm happy with it, and I'm proud of it. I think that stands for a lot. It makes it feel even sweeter.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Any more questions in the chat? Let me have a quick look. A couple of people asked who does the locomotive sounds. That'll be our audio team.
Yes, it will. Yeah.
And I assume the things that they do and that they record and whatnot will be put into. Is it put into this as well, or is it a separate?
The rail vehicle sounds will be worked on by both audio and rail vehicle setup, so we don't tend to delve into it. But the only audio that we really work with is voiceover.
Right.
So that'll be for our tutorials. We'll have to include them into the tutorial objectives.
Right, okay. And Jason's asked a follow-up question around what is the most time-consuming scenario that you've ever worked on?
Now, if we're including timetables, the most time-consuming timetable that I've worked on was the Spirit of Steam one. But in terms of scenario, I tend to not remember the ones that were most time-consuming.
Blank them out.
I'm trying to think of it. Yeah, usually, yeah. What's a standout one that I got really annoyed by? That's going to rattle my brains, and I'll probably think about it of one tonight, but I can't think of one off the top of my head, unfortunately.
No problem. Anna Des has asked, how long does it take the team initially to how long did it take the team initially to create all of the scenarios, timetables, and gameplay related blueprints?
Ooh, good question. So long as we have everything ready, and that would be in a perfect world, which never exists, I would say we'd probably be able to get it done in a perfect world 3 months, but I want to say 4 months because I don't want to undershoot.
You want a little bit of wiggle room, don't you? You want to be able to.
We always want to.
Yeah, we talk about things like polish quite a lot, and I think again that's quite important because obviously everybody's working up to a certain deadline, but beyond that you want to have a certain period of time where you can refine everything, where you can make things better, and you can get to a point where actually rather than it being it's done and everybody, and then it becomes it's done and it looks incredible and everybody's happy with it. So having that kind of extra buffer I think is quite important.
Yeah, definitely. As an addition, this has never been released as DLC, but in between working on projects, myself and Cameron decided to challenge ourselves with how quickly can we make a serviceable scenario. And so long as we have everything there ready, prepared for us, we can make some fairly interesting scenarios within 2 to 3 days.
Challenge accepted.
So long as everything's fine and nothing goes wrong, like if a rail vehicle's halfway through development and certain aspects haven't been, I don't want to say haven't been tested because everything we do has been tested. But we'll always find an edge case when it gets to our team that, oh dear, we tried to set this value to be something that setup wasn't expecting and now it's not working.
Yeah, always a pain when that. Well, I say always a pain when that happens. I've never experienced that because I don't work in dev, but yeah, I'm sure it's a frustrating experience. Joe's suggested we should do a 4-up challenge, make a scenario the quickest, do a time lapse and see if we can get everybody together for it. I like that idea, and then we can play the scenario as part of the 4-up challenge. But I'm not sure we could dedicate.
Yeah, we'd have to. Yeah. I think we'd have to have like a scout's promise that we definitely only took this time beforehand, and then by all means we can play them on stream afterwards.
Yeah, I think in terms of the time best spent, perhaps it's not the time best spent, but it sounds like an interesting idea anyway. There's a lot of questions about how long did certain things take us to do. So Sifa's asked about the research part of development. I'm not sure if that's something.
Research. Yeah, the research part is usually the shortest, actually. So the longest part of research is obtaining and finding working timetables for service mode. Creating scenarios, we'll usually come up with ideas during our planning meetings for that. In the case for East Coastway, though, I think it was the only time we got to actually go to Brighton and Seaford and see what went on along the railway then. That was really useful, and I'd like to do it again if we have a chance. So, our research usually takes about a week.
Okay. I mean, there are obvious, like, we are talking about the gameplay team rather than sort of
gameplay
yeah,
only.
there
I
are.
wouldn't know about how long it takes for everyone else. I assume it would collectively be a heck of a lot longer.
Yeah, I was gonna say the track laying team and the art team and the audio team and all that kind of stuff. They'll all be having their own sort of timelines for things like research and whatnot.
Sourcing the resources for that, I would imagine, would take longer. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. A couple more questions. I think we'll call it a night for tonight. Is it so? Is scenario? So okay, this is a good question actually. Scenario planner in game. Is that based off of a simplified version of what we've seen today?
That's the one thing I didn't show off that I forgot. That's a good question. So it's it's called a data asset, and all it is a large catalog with all the different scenario definitions and services from timetable inside them, and we build it up to try and tell a sort of narrative. So you'd have all of your training for a specific loco first, so you understand how to drive it, do some simpler services and scenarios, and then get into the nitty-gritty challenging stuff later on. So we would implement those once we've actually completed development work on all the scenarios and timetable.
Okay. And one final question from British Ace. What is the easiest country to make timetables for? Yeah, I'll leave it.
Since we're UK based and most of us are British, the UK. Okay. It's a case of what are you familiar with day to day.
Okay, awesome. Thank you very much, Michael, for joining us. Again, thank you very much, everybody at the start, for bearing with us while we had a few audio issues. If you want to watch this and you've come in late to the live stream, we get started at about 10 minutes in. And it's when the things start to look a little bit crazy is when we start to get involved with these bits and pieces. So thank you very much, Michael. It's been really, I found it really illuminating. I've got a newfound respect for anybody who dares to touch any of this stuff, because I worried that I would just cause a domino effect of everything breaking all of the time. It's what I do. But yeah, thank you very much for joining us. I hope we can get you on another stream soon and we can get you to show off a few more bits and pieces of what goes on behind the scenes, because I think the players that have been in the chat tonight have found it really, really useful as well.
Yeah, I'd like to. Hopefully, I don't blow too many minds next time.
We don't bring you on not to blow minds, Michael. So the more minds that are blown, the better. As long as I say, what I would say, if you don't get anything else out of this live stream, is when you next hop into game and you start operating a service or a scenario, just have a think about these blueprints. Think about all of the stuff that goes into it, because there is a lot of background stuff. It's not just plonking something down and saying off you go. There's a lot of things that go into it. So thank you very much for joining us. Thanks, Michael, once again. Railfan TV will be back next week. We'll be showing the schedule tomorrow, and we've got something exciting planned in the form of our first ever 8-up challenge next week, which promises to be absolute carnage. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. I'll let you say goodnight, Michael, as well, because I don't want to talk for you.
Yep. Good night, everyone.
And good night from me. Thank you, everybody. See you later.